The blade went in for the 7th time. March 11th, 1945. Sing Sing Prison, D-Block Corridor. 200. Bumpy Johnson collapsed, blood spreading across concrete like spilled paint. 3 Italian prisoners stood over him, breathing hard. Tony, the Blade Marquez, Vincent Callo, Sal Romano, all holding shivs they'd sharpened for weeks, specifically for this moment. 7 stabs. Abdomen, chest, back, lung, each one placed to kill. The corridor went silent. 60 inmates watched from their cells. Guards ran toward the scene, whistles screaming. But for one frozen moment, everyone stared at the impossible sight. Harlem's king lying in a pool of his own blood. Tony leaned down, whispered in Bumpy's ear, "Luciano sends his regards. Harlem's ours now." Bumpy's eyes were open, still conscious. His lips moved, trying to form words, but only blood came out. A horrible gurgling sound that made hardened criminals look away. Tony laughed, wiped his shiv on his prison pants. "He's finished. Let's go." The 3 Italians walked away with calm confidence. They'd just murdered Harlem's king in front of 60 witnesses. They had no idea they'd made the worst mistake of their lives. These weren't random prison thugs. They were professional assassins, made men in the Luciano crime family. Tony, the Blade Marquez, was the leader. 34 years old, serving 15 years for armed robbery. Inside Sing Sing, Tony was royalty. He'd killed 2 men in prison. Both ruled self-defense, because the Italian mob owned enough guards to ensure Tony's story was always believed. Vincent Callo was the muscle 6'3", 240 pounds of pure violence. Former heavyweight boxer, serving 20 years for manslaughter. He'd hospitalized 7 inmates in 3 years. Nobody messed with Vincent. Sal Romano was the quiet planner, doing 12 years for extortion. He worked in the prison laundry, studied routines, identified the perfect moment to strike, when Tony and Vincent needed a third man they could trust. Sal was the obvious choice. These were professional killers with mob protection, and they just stabbed Bumpy Johnson 7 times with surgical precision. There was just one critical error. They'd assumed 7 stabs would be enough. Bumpy had been walking from the prison library back to his cell at 2:15 p.m., shift change time when corridors were full of inmates, but temporarily light on guards. He was carrying 3 books under his arm: Shakespeare's Hamlet, Sun Tzu's Art of War, and a biography of Frederick Douglass. Even in prison, Bumpy never stopped educating himself. Knowledge was power, and power was survival. Tony stepped out from the blind spot near the stairwell. Vincent and Sal flanked him perfectly, 3 men blocking Bumpy's path in a coordinated ambush that had been planned and rehearsed for weeks. Nobody helped. This was prison justice, brutal, final and absolute. Interfering would only get you killed alongside the target. "You know why we're here," Tony said, pulling out his shiv. The handmade blade caught the weak afternoon light filtering through barred windows. Bumpy's voice was quiet, almost conversational. "Luciano's scared of a man in a cage. Luciano's smart. You're a problem, so we're solving it." They didn't give Bumpy a chance to fight back or negotiate. This wasn't about honor or respect. This was strictly business, mob business, the kind that ended in blood. Vincent grabbed Bumpy from behind, his massive arms pinning Bumpy's shoulders. Sal moved in from the side, blocking any escape route. Tony came straight forward with the killing blade. First stab, abdomen, angled upward toward vital organs. Second, chest, seeking the heart. Third, back between ribs, toward the lungs. Bumpy went to his knees, his books scattering across the concrete floor. Fourth stab, shoulder, severing muscle and tendon. Fifth, side, puncturing what they hoped was kidney area. Sixth, back again, deeper this time. Bumpy collapsed forward onto the cold concrete. Tony delivered the 7th and final stab, right into Bumpy's back, angled toward the lung with lethal precision. "Harlem's ours now," he whispered, then stood up and wiped his blade clean. The 3 killers walked away calmly, disappearing into the maze of corridors and stairwells, confident they'd completed their mission successfully. Luciano would be pleased. The Italians would finally control Harlem's numbers racket. Bumpy Johnson was finished, or so they thought. Guards reached Bumpy within seconds, hands shaking as they checked for life. Blood was spreading rapidly across gray concrete. 7 stab wounds. "Call Dr. Harrison now." They carried him to the infirmary on a stretcher, blood leaving a trail down the corridor. Other inmates pressed against bars, watching in shock as Harlem's king was carried away. Dr. Harrison had been prison physician for 12 years. Even he was shocked by the precision of Bumpy's wounds. 7 stab wounds, 2 to vital organs, punctured lung. He's lost at least 3 pints of blood. He looked at Warden Miller. I'll try, but he's got maybe 6 hours. 8 if he's incredibly lucky. Dr. Harrison worked 3 hours, stitching wounds, stopping bleeding, administering transfusions, miracle surgery under impossible conditions. Meanwhile, Tony, Vincent, and Sal celebrated in their cells. Contraband whiskey flowed, payment from grateful mob bosses. They toasted their success, convinced they'd eliminated the last obstacle to Italian control of Harlem. Hour 1. Bumpy unconscious, breathing labored, skin gray from blood loss. Hour 6. Still unconscious. Dr. Harrison checked, expecting a corpse, heart still beating. Hour 12. The impossible happened. Bumpy opened his eyes. Hour 24. Bumpy Johnson was not only alive, he was alert. Tony got nervous when word came back that his target was breathing, but he reassured himself. 7 stab wounds, punctured lung, he's finished. Vincent and Sal weren't worried. They had Italian mob protection inside the prison, guards on payroll, complete immunity. They had no idea what was coming. Here's what the Italian killers didn't understand about Bumpy Johnson: the fundamental difference between being weak and looking weak. Yes, Bumpy was lying in that hospital bed, barely able to breathe, his body racked with pain from 7 precisely placed stab wounds. To anyone watching, he appeared helpless, defenseless, completely defeated. But his mind was crystal clear and working at full capacity, analyzing angles, calculating possibilities, planning moves that his enemies couldn't even imagine. And in Sing Sing, Bumpy possessed something the Italian mobsters completely lacked: genuine respect and unshakable loyalty from the invisible people who actually made the prison function on a daily basis. For 18 months, while other inmates treated them like shadows or ignored them entirely, Bumpy had consistently treated the black porters, kitchen workers, laundry staff, and janitors like human beings, deserving of dignity and respect. He'd shared his commissary money with men who had nothing. He'd written letters for workers who couldn't read or write. He'd intervened when other inmates tried to exploit or abuse them. He'd remembered their names, asked about their families, treated them as equals in a system designed to dehumanize everyone. Now, lying in that hospital bed with tubes in his chest and IV lines in his arms, Bumpy called in those debts of loyalty and gratitude. A porter named James Washington visited during hour 36. He approached the bed carefully, glancing around to ensure no guards were watching closely. Bumpy whispered something barely audible through his damaged throat, words that couldn't be heard more than 6 inches away. James nodded once, understanding completely, and slipped away as quietly as he'd arrived. The machinery of perfect revenge had begun to turn with the precision of a Swiss timepiece. Vincent followed the same routine every day at 4:30 p.m., climbing metal stairs from the mess hall to the 3rd tier. He'd walked those stairs thousands of times over 3 years. But on March 14th, exactly 72 hours after stabbing Bumpy, something was different. As Vincent reached step 12, his foot hit something slick. Industrial grease, spread across 3 steps in a thin, invisible layer, applied with precision by someone who knew exactly where a man Vincent's size would place his feet. Vincent's 240-pound frame suddenly had no traction. His feet shot out from under him. What happened next was physics. Mass times velocity equals devastating impact. Vincent tumbled down 20 metal stairs, his body hitting every steel edge. The sound echoed through the entire cell block, like thunder. Then, silence. Then screaming. Guards found a former boxer, twisted into an impossible position, legs bent at angles human legs were never meant to achieve. "I can't feel my legs. I can't feel my legs." Dr. Harrison took one look and knew. Spinal cord damage. Multiple vertebrae. "This is permanent." Vincent kept screaming, "Fix it. You have to fix it." "Vincent, the damage to your spinal cord is complete. The nerves are severed. You'll never walk again." Vincent Callo, who had terrorized Sing Sing for 3 years, who had hospitalized 7 men with bare hands, would spend his life in a wheelchair. In prison, where a wheelchair meant complete vulnerability, where you couldn't defend yourself, where every day became survival. A life sentence inside a life sentence. Sal had worked the prison laundry for 8 months without incident. He operated the industrial press, a machine using tons of pressure to flatten uniforms. The safety release was designed to stop the machine instantly if anything went wrong. On March 15th, as Sal fed a shirt through the rollers, his right hand got caught. The safety release should have stopped everything. It didn't. Laundry worker Marcus Williams had disabled the mechanism 17 minutes earlier, just long enough for Sal's shift, precise enough to seem accidental. The rollers kept grinding, kept crushing. The sound was wet, crunching bone and sinew under industrial pressure. Guards shut down the machine, but seconds had passed. What remained of Sal's hand looked like ground meat mixed with bone fragments. Dr. Harrison examined the damage. Too extensive. We need to amputate immediately. Just the hand? Sal asked through tears. I'll try, but if infection sets in? 3 days later, gangrene spread up Sal's arm, black flesh creeping toward his shoulder. Dr. Harrison made the call. We have to amputate at the shoulder. Sal Romano woke up with one arm. In prison, where you needed 2 hands to survive, he was helpless. Every task became struggle. Every day became reminder of his vulnerability. Tony ate the same breakfast every morning. Oatmeal, coffee, toast. Prison routine was sacred. On March 16th, as he took his 3rd spoonful, something went wrong. The oatmeal went down the wrong pipe. At first, it seemed minor. Tony coughed, tried to clear his airway. Instead, it got worse. The thick oatmeal formed a plug in his windpipe, blocking all airflow. Tony's face turned red as he clawed at his throat. Guards knew the Heimlich maneuver. They'd dealt with choking before. One guard grabbed Tony, positioned correctly, thrust upward. Nothing. Another thrust. Another. The technique that had saved dozens of lives. Nothing. Tony collapsed, face purple, eyes bulging. Guards tried again. 4, 5, 6 times. Finally, the blockage cleared. Tony gasped desperately and collapsed, but his heart had stopped. Dr. Harrison began CPR immediately. 1 minute without oxygen. 2, 3, 4. The human brain can't survive more than 4 minutes without permanent damage. Tony's heart restarted, but when Dr. Harrison checked responses, the truth was clear. His body is alive, he told the warden quietly. But his brain, 4 minutes without oxygen. The damage is permanent. Tony, the blade Marquez, was breathing, his heart beating, but nobody was home. Brain death. Permanent vegetative state. His eyes were open, but saw nothing. His mouth moved, but spoke nothing. He couldn't think, understand, or recognize anything. They put him in a wheelchair, fed him through a tube, changed his clothes when he soiled himself. Every day they wheeled him to the mess hall. Every inmate could see him. Tony the Blade, the assassin who tried to kill Bumpy Johnson, now drooling like a baby, staring at nothing with vacant eyes. A living corpse, a breathing reminder of what happens when you fail to kill Bumpy Johnson. Hour 72. Warden Miller walked into the infirmary. Bumpy Johnson was sitting up in bed, alert, reading a book, still bandaged, but very much alive and recovering. Johnson, I need to talk to you. Bumpy looked up. Good morning, Warden. 3 men, the same 3 who stabbed you. Vincent Callo, paralyzed for life. Sal Romano, lost his entire arm. Tony Marquez, brain dead. Vegetable, all within 72 hours. Terrible news, Warden. Prison can be dangerous. So many accidents. You orchestrated this. Warden, I've been in this bed for 3 days, barely alive after 7 stab wounds. How could I orchestrate anything? I know you did this. I can't prove it, but I know. Bumpy set down his book. Let me tell you something about what happened. Those 3 men stabbed me 7 times in front of 60 witnesses. They tried to murder me as a message to every black inmate. He paused. The worst part wasn't the pain or blood loss. It was lying there knowing they thought they'd won. Another pause. But they made one error. They assumed 7 stabs was enough. They assumed I'd die. They assumed wrong. Bumpy's voice dropped to a whisper. Now Vincent will never walk again, helpless in an environment where weakness equals death. Sal will never use his right arm, defenseless where you need both hands to survive. And Tony, his body lives, but everything that made him Tony is gone. He'll spend 20 years being wheeled around like furniture, drooling, while everyone remembers what happens when you try to kill Bumpy Johnson and fail. The warden stared. You destroyed 3 human beings. I didn't do anything, but if I had, I'd say this. They tried to take my life. I didn't take theirs. I took something worse. Their dignity, strength, future, death, would have been mercy. What they got, that's justice. Tony lived 17 more years in that wheelchair, fed through a tube, staring at nothing. Inmates whispered, "That's what happens when you touch Bumpy Johnson." Vincent served his complete sentence wheelchair-bound, never walked again. Released in 1965, dependent on family for everything, bitter and broken. Sal adapted to one arm, released early in 1953, but one-armed ex-convicts couldn't find work. He died homeless in 19. The lesson echoed through every prison: don't try to kill someone unless you can finish the job. If they survive, they'll do something worse than kill you. They'll make you wish you had died. Bumpy was released in 1947, walking out on his own feet, returning to Harlem as legend, the man who survived 7 stabs and orchestrated perfect revenge without lifting a finger. Years later, a journalist asked about the incident. 7 times, Bumpy said quietly. Professional killers who knew what they were doing. If they'd stabbed me 8 times, I probably would have died. But they stopped at 7. That was their mistake. What happened to them was brutal. What they did to me was brutal. I made sure the punishment fit the crime. 7 stabs, 3 destroyed lives. That's not revenge. That's mathematics. Do you regret it? Bumpy was silent. Then, I regret they forced me to show them the difference between dying and wishing you were dead. But the lesson they learned? Sometimes education only sticks when it hurts forever. In Sing Sing, they still tell the story. New inmates learn it first week. They wheel Tony's unresponsive body past cells during meals. A living cautionary tale. They remember Vincent's ramps, Sal's one-arm struggles. The lesson Bumpy taught through psychological warfare. The cruelest mercy is allowing enemies to live with full consequences of their actions. You can stab Bumpy Johnson 7 times. You can puncture his lung, damage organs, leave him bleeding. But unless that final stab stops his heart, he's gonna survive. And when he does, when he opens his eyes and begins to plan, you won't die quickly like you planned for him. You'll spend your life wishing you had. Because Bumpy understood, the most devastating revenge isn't taking someone's life. It's forcing them to live with unbearable weight of what they've done, every single day, until their last breath. 7 stabs. 3 lives destroyed. Perfect mathematical justice, administered by a man who never left his hospital bed. That's why they called Bumpy Johnson the most dangerous man alive. Not because he could kill you, but because he could create a fate worse than death. And he'd deny you even the mercy of a quick end. If this story of impossible survival and perfect psychological revenge moved you, smash that subscribe button. We're telling Bumpy Johnson stories about consequences that echo through eternity, about justice that haunts forever. Drop a comment. Was this justice, or did Bumpy go too far? Hit that notification bell, because next week we're bringing you how Bumpy secretly saved Nat King Cole from racist assassins without the singer ever knowing. Remember, Harlem didn't need superheroes. They had Bumpy Johnson, and Bumpy taught the world that sometimes the most profound mercy is forcing people to live with the full weight of their choices forever. Prison revenge isn't about getting even. It's about making sure the lesson lasts forever.